What's up, everybody? Black Mad Covers, Local Mujer. Hello, hello. What's up? Hey, Donovan Ramsey. What's poppin'? About to get started. Today's gonna be super fun. Hey, Jared, what's going on, bro? This is gonna be a good one. I'm really excited about this one. Jamel Shabazz, everybody knows him. We're gonna get started at 7, maybe a little bit late. What's going on, man? How's everything? Anybody has any questions or anything at any point, definitely feel free to drop them down, and we'll get to them if we can. Yep, this shirt is from P's and Q's in Philly. Boys to men, always gotta rep the home team. Jay Cognito, what's going on, bro? Danny, I see you. This is gonna be a fun one. Like I said before in other videos, and each week, every Thursday, I'm going to be doing a conversation with an artist, a writer, anybody really cool who has a really interesting story in relationship to the barbershop, to promote the release of my new book, You Next, Reflections in Black Barbershops. Hey, Jamel Shabazz is in the building. Let's get him on when we can. I'm super excited about this. The book is out. It came out on Tuesday, and it's going well. All right, bro, you're here. So now you just have to request to join, and you'll be in the mix. Glad I got on early, just to give everybody some time to get settled in. Yes, like I said, the book came out on Tuesday. The reception has been absolutely amazing so far. Everybody has been purchasing. What's up, Mustafa? Peace, brother. My brother.
Peace. How you doing, brother?
It's so good to see you.
It is good to see you too, brother. Man, I am loving this book here. Congratulations, brother. This is a visual masterpiece. It hits home in ways that you can't even imagine, brother. All the memories that came up going through this book. You know, so I commend you and all the writers that contributed to it. It's definitely powerful, brother. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of it.
Of course, I was very honored to have you contribute just a blurb to the project. Your work is work that I admire and have watched for a very long time. So just to have you, in the mix was an honor.
Truly an honor, brother, and a fantastic book. You really did your thing. I'm so happy that you did it because I've been documenting for barbershops for years. And I just built up a body of work, but for you to not only document them, but put forth the book, it's so important, especially in this time that we're living in right now of social distancing. The book is like so timely.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's get right into it. For the people that don't know, I want to just let them know real quick that Jamel Shabazz have made a name for yourself during a thriving era of street photography in New York. Your archive is just incredibly timeless. The photos are incredibly captivating. You were in 2018 awarded the Gordon Parks Foundation Award for your monographs and for your images. Some of your work is at the Bronx Museum of Art, the Schomburg Center, and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. Thank you for joining. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you for having me, brother.
Yeah. So I've been asking everybody, what their go-to haircut is whenever they go to the barbershop. You know what I'm saying? Just to get started. So could you let us know?
Mine's is a light Caesar with a side part and a half against the grain. And that's
Yeah.
it, little fade. I like to have my points
Yeah.
here, my traditional part. And so that's pretty much where
Yeah.
I'm at right now. I've been wearing the
Yeah.
same hairstyle for about 40 years right now. So that's tradition. You know, my barbershop
Wow.
is closed now, so
That's
I'm actually, I got my clippers now, so I got to do my own hair right now. So I'm using my clippers here and little razor hair to get my lines a little bit. So it's been kind of rough, but nevertheless, I'm holding it down to a bit. But that's my classic. Been going with the season for years. For a short moment, I had a fade when I was in the military. You know, my brothers from Philly, and they had that nice little Philly fade going, so I wore a fade for a while. But overall, it's been a season with the part on the left-hand side for decades.
Yeah, and so, you know, I'm Philly. I'm repping Philly right here. You
Yes,
know,
sir, indeed.
I used to always rock the parts too. I'm growing it out myself, as you can see, and I've been, you know, cutting my own hair with a few clippers that I have. So that's good to know. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, you know, we talked a little bit when we were working on the blurb and all that stuff, but what's your relationship to the barbershop?
Man, the barbershop is like, it's a foundation that's been a part of my life ever since I got my first haircut, probably about 3 years old. It's a very special place to me on a number of levels. When I started going early on, it was my father that would take me. So that was a very intimate Saturday to the local barbershop, Mr. Scott's in Red Hook, to get a cut. And I was just, you know, it was a fascinating place because here I'm a young child, very curious, and I'm observing the conversations amongst the elders in the barbershop. And while I'm waiting to get my hair cut, you know, all the barbershops back then had magazines. So I'm going through the Jets, the Ebony, the Life magazine. So it was like being in the library. You know, it was almost like an oasis because I'm gaining a wealth of knowledge from the publications that are laying around. And at the same time, I'm listening to the various conversations that are going about amongst the elders. So it was a very special place, you know, especially when I think about my times with my father. That was those moments that really allowed us to bond during my early stages of my life. And for the past, I'll say for the past 50 plus years, I've been going to the barbershop on a regular. So it's been a tradition constantly, at least once every week or once every 2 weeks, I'm going to the barbershop to get a fresh cut.
That's awesome. You know, one of the things that you said about going in and seeing all the magazines, the Jets and Ebonies, I definitely remember doing that or looking at those with my dad. And one of the things that I've, you know, noticed is that they'd be looking at those magazines and seeing the guys inside of them and seeing the guys on the style guides were really like possibility models for me, people that I could model myself after. So that's one of the things that I remember a lot. So could you tell me and tell everybody about a little bit about your experiences photographing the barbershop?
Well, the barbershop to me was an ideal place to photograph back in the days. It was perfect because that's a space where people went to get fresh. So when you went to the barbershop, you got a fresh cut. You didn't mind getting your picture taken because you look good. So I found that early on when I started.
Froze just a little bit. You still there? All right, y'all, we're gonna give this a hot connection issue. Just 1 second, y'all. Bear with us.
I don't know what happened. Okay. Can you hear me, bro?
I can hear you perfectly fine.
All right.
You were saying, say it again.
I lost my train of thought. I was trying to get back on.
It's all good. You were talking about how the barbershop was an ideal place to be photographed.
Right. Of course, what was unique about the barbershop back in the early 80s for me, in my neighborhood on my spot on 54th and Church Avenue, it was a barbershop right in the corner. So all the brothers I knew from the neighborhood, they would go to that particular barbershop. So while I was hanging out, brothers be going in, or I might see them and say, bro, you know, I got to get a photograph. And they say, yo, Jamel, let me get a fresh cut. When I get my hair cut, you can get a photograph of me. So being outside of a barbershop or beauty shop was always good because once people came out, they looked good and they wanted to be photographed. So it was always that ideal place to be, not only to photograph people getting their haircuts, but also the barbers working at their craft. They wanted to be documented because they were working in an art form and they took great pride in what they did. So not only was I photographing people that were getting haircuts, I was also photographing the barbers because, like I said, they took a lot of pride in what they were doing. So that was always an easy spot. You know, any barbershop I went to, it was never a problem to photograph people. Matter of fact, that was the easiest place to photograph people at because everybody was getting a fresh haircut. So I have a really, my earlier work was focused on a number of barbershops in the local area.
Yeah, and I know that you spent some time in Philly and you documented some of the shops there. What was that?
Yes, I did. Yes. I was given the task to document the community of Germantown. And while there, I knew that it was very important to learn the history. To learn the history of the space, I knew I had to go into the barbershops. So that's another place that I go to learn about different places. In every city in which I go to, I make it a point to go to the barbershop, get a fresh cut, and have a conversation with the owner to learn more about the spots and where to go to, because it's the barbers that know all of the history because they're constantly interacting with people. You know, so every city I've been traveling to, both near and far, I always make it a point to connect with the barbers firsthand.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, I went to about 10 different cities in different shops all over. And sometimes I'll say this, it could be a little bit intimidating walking into a barbershop in a city that you had no idea, you know, who's there. But one of the things that helped me was I just really wanted to just talk to everybody and give them the sense that what I was doing was showing them in a positive light and just highlighting what the community of the barbershop was. I've heard you talk a little bit about your approach to people on the street to, you know, get their photograph. But could you tell us a little bit more about your approach to make people feel comfortable to photograph them?
I think one of the main keys for me was always having work with me. I always kept a portfolio with really strong images. Yep. So that was one of the main things. You have a body of work, you have a vision, and when you approach someone, you approach them with sincerity. You know, and back then, I had a number of ideas in which I wanted to really incorporate. I want to document, but more importantly, I want to engage young people about what was going on in the street. So I would approach them. I would introduce myself. At that time, I had just came home from the military, so I was trying to really reorientate myself with the environment. You know, so I would just approach people and say, I just came back. You know what I mean? I'm curious of what's going on in the world. And a lot of brothers, they would be more than open to just build with me about what's been taking place. I said, I've been going for a few years. I want to know what's going on out here. Very much like Marvin Gaye's song, What's Happening, Brother. That was the vibration for me at that time. I want to know what was going on. So we would have a conversation. And then once the conversation was over with, I would engage in my brother. Can I get a photograph for you? You know, for the history books. So it was always a conversation for the most part early on. And I would take the photograph and I said, bro, the picture be ready in a couple of days. Let me get you your information. I'll give you a copy of it. So I always made it a point that when I made a photograph of a person, I always tried to give them a copy of it back. Once they got that photograph and they saw the beauty of it, sound started to travel to a lot of people in the neighborhood, and they knew I was legitimate. They knew it wasn't about just taking the photograph and keeping it moving. I was sincere and wanted to give them a copy of it because it was about building relationships. I want to get to know people. The photography was secondary. What was more vital to me was trying to engage young people to get a feeling of what was going on, because during that time period, a lot of young people were dying at the hands of other young people. And I needed to do my part as an elder to try to get down to what's happening. So the camera was that magnet that drew me to a lot of people and drew them to me so I could have conversations to find out what was going on. And it always started with a compliment. You know what I mean? I want to acknowledge the people in which I want to have conversations with. I wanted them to know that I see their greatness and I feel their soul and their spirit. So once you're able to do that and break that ice, then you could build them and let them know what you're about. And I said, bro, here's some of my photographs. So when I shared my images out of my portfolio, it allowed them to see what I was doing. It's one thing to say what you're trying to do, but now when you have evidence of your work, it allows them to just have a better understanding. Another point that is very important, I always had a business card. So once you have a business card, they see that you're legitimate. So between the portfolio, the business card, and a vision, those are the three elements that were very vital.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I feel you on, you know, being sincere and authentic and really wanting to engage. I think that was something that saved me so much going into places. Like you said, having a portfolio of work to show. This is what I'm capable of. This is what I'm trying to do. And like you said, I think engaging them in a way that is beyond just let me take your photo. Let me talk to you. Let me find out who you are. Let me find out what your motivations are, what you're interested in. I really felt like that was one of the things that helped me navigate some of those spaces. So
Right.
I know that you got your first camera, I believe, from your father, and he was a pretty big influence on you when it came to photography. But also, y'all have a really close story, like you said, about being in the barbershop together. Could you talk a little bit about his influence on your work, and then we'll get into some of the influences that you had later on in life?
Well, my father was an artist. Besides being a photographer, he did a number of things. He built model airplanes. He was a sketch artist. He was a cartoon artist. He was a photographer during this time in the Navy. So what he did, he created an environment for me where we had a lot of photography books and publications in the house. So before I picked up my first camera, I was looking at photography books. I was seeing the beauty of that visual language early on, and I was fascinated behind that. Between the photography books and the various magazines that was in our home, it allowed me to see the power of photography. In addition to the fact that we had family photo albums that were passed on from generation to generation. So I was able to see photographs of my family, and that allowed me to see the importance of holding on to this history. And I had uncles. All of my uncles, for the most part, they took pictures as well. And they had photo albums. Every family had a family photo album. So I felt great delight in going to the homes of my relatives and looking at the albums and just seeing the importance of holding on to that visual history. Well, I had an uncle that during certain holidays, he would get all the nieces and nephews together and get a slide projector out and do these slideshows. And that was a really special treat. He might have photographed us and look at slides of us. So that seed was planted early on in my mind about the importance of image making and preserving the history. And I started to just photography. My father instructed me to read a number of books. And one book was the Time Light book series on photography, the whole entire collection. He directed me to read that. He said, if you want to understand photography, study that. So within that collection, I studied themes, light, composition, developing. And as time would progress, a friend gave me an enlarger. And it's at that point, that's when me and my father really connected, because we converted our laundry room into a dark room, and my father taught me the whole process of making prints. And that took it to a whole nother level right now. And that was like a joy that really bonded us. And then my father would critique my work. You know, he would put me on assignments. Initially, he would tell me to photograph my room, photograph everything that you see within your room and within inside your house. Then he told me to go around the block and document the block. I found that to be rather boring because I wanted to interact with people, but nevertheless, I did it. And what's so interesting about that body work, which I created, it is so valuable right now because it's structure. It's the landscape of the community. It's no people. And that was my early assignments. And I would go to the local drugstore back then, get the road process early on. And then my father would critique the work. He would get a grease pencil and erase it, tell me about light, the composition was off. And that pretty much grew me. So for a number of years, I would bring my work back to my father and he would critique it. Even when I was printing images in my dark room, you know, he would come later on in the day and get his grease pencil and erase over it, tell me I'm doing a good job of things of that nature. So he was extremely instrumental in me seeing. And one of the greatest gifts that he gave me was telling me to always carry your camera with you. Not only do you carry it with you, you have it out, you have the cap off, you have it set at 1/25th of a second at 5.6, and you just keep that third eye open.
Yeah. So real quick, for the people that are just joining, I'm joined by the icon, Jamel Shabazz.
Oh, no icon. No icon. I'm just your brother.
Yeah.
No
but
icon.
You are definitely an inspiration to a lot of us. But, you know, one of the things you told me when I first met you was you asked me where my camera was, and I did not have it with me that day.
Ooh.
So you told me, you said, you got to have it with you at all times and have it ready. You know what I'm saying? And I think that was really, really important for me to learn from you. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is the process of making those prints and being in that dark room. Could you talk about what that was for you, like mentally, just being in that space and able to see your work?
It was magic, brother. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. It was an incredible science to actually, you know, take that negative and put it in an enlarger and just see, you know, see the creation come alive, and then to mix it in the chemicals. It was just a phenomenal process of creation, because it's one thing to make the image itself, but now when you go in the dark room and you actually make that print, it's an exciting feeling. I used to go in my dark room at like 12 o'clock in the morning and get out at 8 o'clock in the morning. I have music
Yeah.
playing, I'll create a certain ambiance, and I would just get into a serious zone. And I would rush
Yeah.
the process in the beginning because I was so excited. Sometimes I'll take it out of the stopper, and the picture would not really be fully developed, but I was just so excited in seeing it. But it was an
Yeah.
exhilarating feeling to just see that image come alive and just get it the way that you want it to be done in terms of the different shades of black. So it was
Yeah.
always a really special moment. It's something I didn't quite master, but nevertheless, I created a number of prints back in that day and time that I still hold very dear to my heart right now. And I just
Yeah.
wished I could have stayed with it a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? One of the things that I feel like is important for all of us to understand right now, and maybe this whole lesson of COVID has taught us, is that we can slow down a little bit and try to re-engage ourselves with the things that really make us feel, real joy and, real passion. So, if you have some time, maybe you can get back into it. Another thing too that I wanted to mention is I just saw that my dad joined the conversation.
Wow, very good.
He's a ball player. And he always talks about the fundamentals of
All
whatever
right.
that you're doing. So I wanted to just acknowledge the fact that your dad gave you fundamentals. My dad told me fundamentals. And I think that it's something that we can pass on to others.
Yes, what a blessing.
Begin to share. So could you talk to us a little bit about your what model your first camera was? I know that you have some assignments of just photographing your bedroom or just the neighborhood, but what did it feel like to have that piece of equipment in your hand to create art?
In the beginning, it was very intimidating because I didn't understand it. I had a Canon AE1. It looked good. And when I first came home from the Army, I just had it. It was collecting dust for a short time period. It was my father that started to teach me the aperture and shutter speed. So once I understood light and speed, then that intimidation factor was gone. And then I realized I had a time machine, because I look at the camera as being a number of things. It's beyond a camera to me. It's a time machine, it's a compass, and it's a weapon. So when I realized the power of the camera by having it, it taught me, it brought me to different places. Without the camera, it'd be one thing, but it was something about having a camera around my neck that guided me on a path. So it became like this compass that allowed me to travel to places I would normally not travel to and meet people along the way that I needed to meet and document my existence. So now I have this device that's a time machine that allowed me to freeze time and motion. And what a beautiful instrument to have, to be an alchemist in a sense, where you could just freeze a moment forever. So it was a wonderful feeling. And at the same time, it led me to people I felt I needed to meet. It was just something about the camera and having around my neck. It gave me a voice where I would see brothers and sisters on the street corner that I would normally probably not speak to if I didn't have a camera with me. But now having a camera, I had a reason to approach them and engage them about what was going on. So it guided me. And that became, I was just so compelled with the power of photography. I just traveled constantly, just looking to connect with people. And I just went with the flow of it. Having a camera and having film with me, it's like, that's all I needed. Camera, some film, a little bit of water, and I'm good to go. And I would just walk throughout my neighborhood in different neighborhoods. I might get on the train and look at neighborhoods that were interesting, get off and just document. And I've always felt that wherever my camera took me, I needed to be. And it was, it's amazing as I look back at it right now, because it guided me on some serious paths, and it allowed me to interact with people that I would normally not interact with using the language of photography. Again, not only did I have the camera with me, but I also have the photography with me. My portfolio. So unlike today, where you really can't connect with people like that, back then people were a little bit more open. Once the crack epidemic hit, things started to change and people got paranoid. But the early 80s was a really good time period for me being a photographer, because it was still the spirit of love in the community, and you could travel freely and engage people without any suspicion.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm just kind of just like listening to what you're saying and just thinking about how important you take the time, how important it is for you to just take the time just to travel. And it seems like to me like it was like a, very meditative, kind of like just like a prayer in a sense. You're having a conversation with yourself and with these other people through the lens of through your camera.
Yes.
So one of the things that I wanted to just quickly talk to you about is, every time I've seen you, and also I've seen many of your images, you photograph, you make images of people that look very stylish of the time. You know what I'm saying? Like one of the things you talk about is this time machine and this time capsule. You always look so stylish and fly to me. Do you have a personal style philosophy?
Yes, I think that what you see is just, I call it refinement, and it's a part of the photographic process. When you dress a
Yeah.
certain way, it gives off a certain energy or frequency, and it allows people to look at you in a certain type of light. So early on, I started designing my own clothes because I wanted a particular look. I didn't want to look like everybody else, and having a little bit of height on me, I needed to do that anyway. So
Yeah.
I started designing my own clothes when I was about 17 to create a particular
Okay.
image, that reflected a certain type of energy or frequency. And that was very important for me personally because, it's a sense of pride, and not pride
Yeah.
in an arrogant sense, but just a sense of self-awareness. And
Yeah.
it was just a part of my process. And I would strategically wear certain colors when I would go out because I knew that those colors manifested certain vibration, like certain
Mm.
earth tones. It created a vibe that was necessary to interact with people. So that's something that I've been doing for a long time. I put a lot of thought into everything I wear, especially now when you deal with the science of colors. Certain colors give off a certain type of energy if you're wearing the red or the blue if you don't understand the science behind that. So, so wearing certain neutral colors is very vital. And if I was going to impact a certain group of people, like if I was going downtown Brooklyn, I would dress a certain way that will make me, how can I say this? It would allow me to engage people in a very warm current. And when
Yeah.
they see you dress a certain way, they could feel that vibration. If you
Yeah.
dress like everybody else, you become common. But when you have a certain type of style to yourself, it makes people just a little bit more curious to you and even open.
Yeah.
So again, I took a lot of care in everything that I wore on the street back in the days, even to this very day.
Yeah, that's powerful. One of the things that I think is important that I tried to make clear in you next was that the barbershop is a place where you can cultivate your identity. And you see so much of that evident in that space, but also, like you're saying, the power of self preservation. You know what I'm saying? How you put yourself together means a lot. The very first time I met you, I just saw a quick little story. You were wearing a red double-breasted blazer. And I was like, oh my God, that's just so fresh. And I'll never forget that. And actually, the picture that I have on my Instagram is from
Yes,
that day.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
that it stood out. It stood out to me. I want to pivot a little bit. I had the opportunity to photograph some of the guys at the Fulton County Jail here in Atlanta. And it was probably the most powerful interaction that I had making images. And I know that you spent some time with youth as a correctional officer. Could you talk about how that time influenced you as a photographer, as an artist, but even beyond that, just as a man?
Well, I feel that that was my assignment in life. I felt wholeheartedly that was my destiny, to go into the belly of the beast as an
Yeah.
officer, but as a guide. Because during that time, the crack epidemic had just hit, and a lot of people were falling victim to the system. So when I came home from the military, I took a number of tests, and it so happens that the correction called me. And I accepted that as my path because prior, I had some friends that were falsely accused of a crime that they did not commit. And we would sit down and speak about the innocent people that was incarcerated, in addition to the fact that there are a lot of people in jail in general who need guidance. I understood the Attica Rebellion and what happened, and the fact that a lot of the prisoners, they demanded Black and brown correctional officers, because it was a lot of whites and they weren't being treated fairly. So I knew this is a place I needed to be. And I needed to be there to be a light, to try to guide as many people as I could. And it was a terrible experience, brother, when I first got there, because I saw so many broken, beaten down men. I saw so much hatred and war and violence. And it broke my heart because some people I would see, I might have had encounters with people on the street maybe a few weeks earlier, and now they're incarcerated. And a lot of people from my neighborhood. So I used my position to try to guide as many people as I could while I was in there. I brought my portfolios in there to encourage people. I brought reading material to encourage people to read and not give up. And I tried to guide a lot of individuals. So I needed to be there. Unlike the streets, where I might interact with people for a short time period, and then we go about our way. Now in jail, I have an opportunity to engage you for 8 hours and put you under the wing and guide you. And it was an exchange because I met a lot of angels that were incarcerated that also guided me. And
Yeah.
while being in there, I looked for George Jackson. I looked for Malcolm X. I looked for
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, because they were all incarcerated. So there's a lot of good people that are there. You don't know who the angels are. So I try to treat everybody with dignity, and I try to guide them. And like I said, I gained a wealth of knowledge from so many individuals. Even to this very day, due to social media, I reconnected with a lot of young men, some who spent over 30 years in prison, who reached out to me. And I had them when they might have been 17 years old. And now they did 30 years in prison. And I was able to give them some type of guidance. My photographs gave them inspiration. You know, so it was a necessary assignment that I needed to go on. And there's some that may not understand that path and why I took it. You know, there's some individuals that just didn't understand, and that was my assignment in life. I spent 20 years within that system, and I met so many deep individuals who I was able to help out. I met one young brother who had changed his whole entire life. He had fell victim to crack early on, and crack really tore that brother apart. And then he was able to recover, but he had a warrant. And I'll never forget, he came to court, and he was a changed man. The brother was impeccable. He had transformed his whole entire life, but he has this warrant now. And he was in a really bad place. And I felt for the brother. I never met him before. And I'll never forget going to get him a lawyer. I knew a brother by the name of Steve Rico, who's a real solid brother. And I said, brother, I need your help. I got this young man in here that got caught up in the situation. He has a warrant. And the brother represented him and got him out of there. And they were going to be friends for life. I had so many encounters like that. Every day I went to work, I would go into a bullpen looking for young brothers that I could snatch up and give guidance to. So looking in the cell to see if there's anybody that I knew, because I could have easily been in that cell. So I worked in that system and never forgot where I came from. But again, it was an assignment that I was destined to go on. And I suffered a lot of hardships because I saw a lot of hatred. I saw people who couldn't take it no more. They were trying to kill themselves. I saw individuals that inflicted atrocities on other individuals for nonsense, the slashings, the stabbings. It was a very brutal world, brother, but we needed to be in there. And I was actually trying to recruit more brothers to get on the job because we needed help, because that's where our people were at. Believe it or not, so many of our people there. And when the crack came, forget it, was terrible, brother, because I saw so many individuals that were once they were standing upright, and that crack tore them apart, and now they were broken men, and all they needed was guidance. And they would try to avoid me. But I would not. I wouldn't judge them. I understand that they took a hit. It's like a 15-round fight. You might have got knocked out the first couple rounds, but it ain't over. So I try to help heal a lot of those brothers. I don't hold that against them. But it was some place that I felt necessary to be in. And I think about, not a day goes by where I don't think about my time, working in corrections. I'm still haunted by the ones I couldn't save.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. Just hearing you say that just makes me think about so much of the things that we do, and how, we all should just be a little bit more intentional about our purpose and being able to just walk in alignment with that. And I think that that's powerful. I really do. I commend you. I commend you for that work and for having that vision. One of the things that I like to ask you, just piggybacking off of that, what were some of the things that you advise people to read, or did you read anything that you could share with those people, and could you maybe share with us?
Well, at that time, the Prison Letters of George Jackson was very instrumental for me. That book allowed me to see the system itself, and the hypocrisy of the government and some of the policies in which they have. So I thought that was a very interesting book, considering who George Jackson was. I mean, he was a young man that got committed to 1 year to life during some very difficult times in San Quentin and Soledad Prison. That book really opened up my mind to the criminal justice system early on. So I knew that was a book that young men needed to read in jail or prison to give them some type of guidance as they try to struggle with surviving in the system. George read, he worked out, despite the fact that he spent 7 years in solitary confinement, he never gave up hope. So with a lot of these young brothers that I was meeting that were doing a lot of time, I encouraged them to read that book. I encourage them to just read it in general. Anything they could, whatever they could read, just read, elevate yourself. Read books, enhance your vocabulary. Understand science and mathematics. Just read. Go to the library, go to school, educate yourself. Just because you're in the system, you can't succumb to it. There was just so many books. I can't even recall right now. The Destruction of Black Civilization, The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. So many books, but a lot of books really geared on self-development too, because they needed to heal themselves. A lot of brothers came from very difficult childhoods. Mind you, when I was a correction officer, a lot of the young men that were under my wing, their fathers had served in Vietnam. That was that generation. A lot of them were born between 65 and maybe 70. So I was noticing when I would do cell searches, I would see photographs, Polaroids of men in uniforms, and they were in Vietnam. So it occurred to me that this is the generation their fathers went to Vietnam. Some didn't come back, and then others came back wounded. So a lot of these young men just needed guidance in their lives. Another factor too, a lot of these young men they came from the foster care system. You know, so they were already broken at that point. So they needed a lot of help. And then some of them couldn't even read or write. You know, you had a whole generation that you can give them a book, but they couldn't read. And that's why some had resulted to violence, because that was their way of getting their frustration out. So it was a very challenging task, because every situation was uniquely different.
Yeah, yeah. Powerful stuff. Being an artist and, you know, having made so many images, I like to ask you, what about photography? What about art? What purpose do you think that serves in our lives? I know that, you know, you spent some time abroad while you were in the military, and I'm just curious to know if there was any art that you made there that kind of just helped you throughout that entire process.
What's interesting about my time overseas, I wasn't really making images over there. I took a pause and I focused more on music. I got heavily involved in the music culture over there, because that was very healing at that point. You know, I got my equipment over there like a lot of other soldiers back then. We didn't have computers, so it was about having your stereo equipment. I focused on that. I was reading and trying to elevate myself, because I went in the military a troubled individual, and I knew I was going to be home soon. So I wanted to elevate myself as much as I could. I took advantage of all of the educational programs. I stayed in the library, you know, and I just try to I try to maintain my focus over there, because it was a time period in which a lot of drugs were there. A lot of people falling victim to that. People getting incarcerated behind both the heroin, the hash, and a host of other drugs. So I was just trying to maintain my focus, to do my time, to return back to America a better person. And that situation informed my photography, because I said to myself when I was in Germany, when I returned back to the world or America, I don't want to ever be without memory. So when I got back during the summer of 1980, all I wanted to do was document my world. I didn't want to forget anything, because when I was in the field in Germany, I thought about the trains, what they look like. I thought about the street corners and the people and all that. So I would just fantasize about what America looked like, what New York looked like. So when I came home, and once I got into photography, I documented all that. I wanted to get the trains, the street corners, 42nd Street, the Lancet Street. I never wanted to be without memory again, because I realized being overseas, I needed to have memories. So that kind of like propelled me to move forward on that level. In addition to having a journal, I want to write, and I never want to forget anything, because everything was so valuable to me when I was over there. I always was when I wasn't into my music, I was just thinking about how things look like in the world.
Yeah. Are you still journaling today?
Always. I've been doing it now for about over 40 years now. So I have a lot of material. You know, when I made certain images, I would write about that experience, especially my time in jail. I would write about that. Certain things that really impacted me, I had to write about. Every Saturday, I take a moment to pause and I write about things that happened the week. And I've been doing that for a number of years right now, just to get it out, you know, because there's a lot of things that I retain. There's a lot of conversations I have. So I feel the need to just let it out and put it on paper and then reflect back on it. You know, I date it, I time it, and I go back to it maybe, you know, after a few years, I like to return and revisit some of the things which I've written. And it's amazing because it complements a lot of my photographs. Because I did a lot of writing when I was out in the field shooting, and things that might have pained me, you know, to get it out of my system, I would write about it. Yeah. You know, and really extensively. Some of the conversations I had, after I finished speaking to somebody, I might take a moment to pause and find me a nice quiet place and write about the interaction that we had.
Yeah, yeah. I remember journaling a lot when I was in college. When I look back on some of the things, it was interesting to reflect on them, because you get a feel for where you were, and then you get a chance to see where you are and that journey. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Of growth, which I think is like really is really powerful. I just want to read a few of the comments that people are saying that, you know, somebody's saying that writing is breathing. They would like to start back into writing again. Good. My mom said that she doesn't want to forget her memory. Someone says that the exile was the genesis, which was fascinating. So you're bringing up a lot of thoughts with people. Some people are saying that you're you preserve moments of culture, and they look back over your photos in NYC to this day just to see how it once was. Just out of curiosity, when you look at New York in the state that it is now, what does that bring? Like, what do you think about that now?
That's a really great question. It's very painful, you know,
Yeah.
brother. To be honest with you, it bothers me, you know, and it's a very difficult adjustment that I'm having right now. Of course, the fact that we have to wear masks, you know, it's a problem for me. You know, we can't see the fullness of a person anymore, and that doesn't feel right. The fact that people are social distancing, yes, we have to do that because of the concern about catching a virus, but it's produced a divide right now and this paranoid feeling. And I don't like that coming from a space where you were able to see people interact with individuals. And it was already getting difficult because we were constantly wearing headphones and we couldn't really connect with people. Now to have this additional situation added on, it only makes it that much more complicated in terms of communication. You know, I went out for a photo shoot a few weeks ago and it was just frustrating. Wearing a mask, it was uncomfortable, but out of respect, I wore it. And then, like I said, looking around and having people reach out to me who knew me, but I didn't know them. You know, that's one aspect of it. And then seeing the despair in the street, you know, the fact that a number of people, thousands of people, matter of fact, have lost their jobs, you know, and there's others that are going to lose their homes. Seeing that, the anxiety in the faces of people when you're able to really see it in their eyes, you know, you see this fear, seeing the homelessness in the street, seeing a lot of garbage now that's not being picked up. It's very troubling. You know, I was out in Spanish Harlem last week, and it was just very painful to look around and see where things are going at right now. And I'm really concerned about the future at this point. You know, where is this thing going? But I'm just trying to maintain an optimistic mindset to move forward. But again, there is a lot of concern.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I'm glad that you brought this up, how are you managing to create, if you're creating at all, given the current circumstances that we're in? I see that, I just heard you say that you did a photo shoot recently, but is that, you know, normal for you? Are you, you know, normal to be working during this whole process? Are you?
No, it's not normal. I was very fortunate that I was given a couple of assignments that allowed me to get out and build up a really solid body of work. But at this point in my life, after doing this for 45 years, I like being home now because I have an opportunity to go through my thousands upon thousands of photographs and revisit certain moments in time. And that experience, it brings me great joy because I can go back to 42nd Street in the 1980s and see a very different day and time. I can go back to the subways when people went the crowded rush hour. I can go back to downtown Brooklyn where there was a spirit of brotherly love before the crack epidemic hit. So for me to have these frozen moments in time and revisit them, it's a wonderful joy because with all the traveling I've been doing over the many years, I haven't had an opportunity to really just settle down and unpack my bags and reevaluate my life. So now I can do that. I can reevaluate my journal. So I'm never bored. I always have things to do because I have so much work in front of me. I have music I need to listen to. So I think that this whole situation of a lockdown has been a blessing for me because it's just demanded that I take a moment to pause and reevaluate my journey, which I've been doing. And it's been a very rewarding experience to just go back in the time, brother. And I got so many photographs and negatives. I'm actually working on a new book project right now. So this time has allowed me to really go through the editing process and develop a really strong body of work for my next publication.
Yeah. So this just made me a few questions that I have just out of that one thing, or one statement that you made. One, I'd like to know about your archiving process because, like you said, you have a body of work that spans 45 years. I would love to know what that process is like. You know, digging back into, you know, all of those old images that you have. And also I'd like to know, you know, at some point we'll talk about what it is like to put together a publication. Because I'll say this, I didn't know a lot about putting together something like this, but I learned so much. And, you know, I just would love if you could share any, you know, tips or any information that you have, you know, to give other people who may be going through that process.
Well, first of all, you did an incredible job with your book, brother. I mean, I'm just blown away. I still can't believe it's your first because everything about it is on point. You know, from the title, the writers, the images that you selected for the book. It's just one phenomenal book. But right now, I'm starting with my photo albums, you know, because back in the days, I got a lot of prints done, a lot of 4x6 prints. So I have a number of albums right now from back in the day. So I'm structuring all those albums according to years. And that's the process within itself. So I'm doing all of my albums now. Having had a number of exhibitions. I have so many prints right now of all sizes, from 5x7s, 8x10s, 11x14, 16x20, 20x30s. I'm organizing all of my prints right now. So that's the task. So I'm just starting at that point right now. That alone is a lot. I got slides. I got negatives. I'm organizing my slides, you know, and I'm organizing all of my negatives right now. So it's a great task. But again, I'm starting with the prints right now because that gives me a gauge of what I have. You know, looking at the photograph takes me back in the time, and this allows me to sequence the work. And that's one of the motivations behind me doing books, because once I do a book, I could put that body of work to the side. Within all the books which I've done, once that book is published, all of those negatives go into a particular box. So that's mainly my archiving process. That's the motivation for doing the books, because once that book is out there in the universe to be shared, and now that body of work can just go away. So all those photographs that are published in those books, I put them in certain catalogs and just put them to the side right now. So that's where I'm starting at right now. I haven't even gotten into scanning right now because I have so many prints I'm working with.
I can't imagine like how many you have. Back in December of last year, I spent some time with Sean Walker of Kamange. I asked him what piece of advice he could give. He said, archive, 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 archive. Making sure that you maintain, you know, a structure of what it is that you have. You know what it is you have, and it sounds like you've already done so much of that heavy lifting through all of the years of journaling that you did.
And another key element that I make it a point too is to make sure that my work is in important collections. So a lot of the institutions I reach out to, so they could purchase the work or I make donations, and with that, now the work is preserved. So I have so much of this, I don't mind doing that. A number of the shows I do, once that exhibition is completed, you know, I make it a point to donate a body of work to those institutions so the work could be preserved. So that's another very important thing in which I try to tell a lot of younger photographers, try to get your work into collections.
Yeah. That's a really good piece of feedback. Everybody listen, write that down.
And I have to take a moment too, brother. If you please allow me, I just want to just acknowledge the listening audience. I thank all of you for tuning in. I really appreciate that. There's so many other things that you could doing. So the fact that you're taking a moment out of your time to engage us in conversation, I appreciate that.
Yes, no, we definitely appreciate that. I've been so excited about this. I've been telling everybody that I know, like sending them the little flyer to be like, tune in. He's going to be talking to me. It's going to be great. Like, I've been so excited about this.
I appreciate that.
So I know, or I've read recently that you were just working on City Metro. Has it been released yet?
Yes, it has. It's been released early this month. Yeah.
What was that like to release? This is your 9th book?
10th.
10th. This is your 10th book. Yeah. What was the process of going through that archive to put this book together?
It started with an idea, and the idea was to do an exhibition called City Metro. So I hooked up with a good friend who's a publisher and curator, Benny Taschen, and he came up with the idea of giving me a solo show in Germany called City Metro. And with that, you know, I suggested a catalog, and he agreed. And then we decided that we would take a traditional catalog and turn it into a hardcover catalog, which is in fact a book. So once the idea of the show came into play, then we start to go through the editing process of the images that will be conducive for the theme. So with the idea of City Metro, I want to look into bus images, people on the bus, off the bus, train images, anything that related to the New York City subway system. And we gathered up the images, and between him and I, we did a really strong edit, and we just put the book together. You know, I gave a little commentary about each image, and we made it happen. So it was just pretty much having an idea, very much like you next. The idea was City Metro. So once the idea of an exhibition is there, now how do you fill in the gap? You know, what images really work well? I like to always start with a cover for motivation. The cover of that book is what I call Rush Hour. And it's a really classic photograph that I took back in the early 1980s. So I had the cover, and I just need to fill in the gap with images that really speak to the time. I just want any photographs in the book. I want a photograph that had strong backstories. And that's what pretty much became of it. And it went on to be a pretty good book, and the exhibition has done well.
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed about seeing some of those images, and, you know, I have Sights in the City back here, which which is signed, which is cool.
All right. Very good.
Is the, you know, the posing of so many of the people that you take. Is there an art to that? What is the science behind it, if there is any?
And I believe that it is. Posing is an art. And it's very vital to my process because I do two forms of photography. I do candid images and I do posing. The posing is a result of approaching subjects who are open to be photographed, but they don't know what to do. So here you have someone who's willing to stand in front of your camera, but they don't know what to do. So they might even say to me, what do you want me to do? So now I have to work and create an idea that's going to make a really powerful photograph. So that's when the idea of posing came into play, you know, sizing people up, you know, in a particular order, having people crouch, having the perfect location that will highlight what they're wearing. And it became a fun thing too, especially when I was downtown Brooklyn, because we used to have like pose battles. You know, I get some of the live brothers on the street corner from Albee Square Mall, and I'll approach them and I have them posing up, and we'd go through a few motions. It might be about 5 frames of different poses. And I would just sit back and let a number of them create poses. And what was interesting about it, people across the street who I might want to photograph also might even be their enemies. They might see how they're posing up. So after I finish photographing that crew, I'll go across the street and they would have already seen what their opposition was doing. So now I'm photographing them and they trying to outpose them. So it became almost like the battle of the pose to create the most important image. Because another factor too was they knew that I assured them that they were going to be in my books. So if you're going to be in a book, you got to come correct. You got to be right. So I never wanted any real stiff, boring poses. I wanted poses that were strong and represented something, because the poses is kind of vital. It's something about that body language that says a whole lot. You know, got cats crouched down, the handshakes, throwing their arms around each other. I try to just add certain elements to just bring the show unity and love. And that's what I was actually trying to do. Because in a lot of my poses, you see the handshake, you see the embrace. Because I might say show some love. So that's my idea, bringing people together in the spirit of love and fun.
Yeah. One of the things that I like picked up from you is, and I hope you see it evident in you next, but all of the Barber portraits, I wanted to make sure that I made portraits of them. But they were always asking, like, what do you want me to do? And one of the things that I felt like was really important, a really important way for them to pose is to pretend as if they had just received a haircut in their chair. Okay. And I feel like some of the things that I got were like, I really love some of those portraits. So I picked that up from you.
Very good. And you got, everyone looks like royalty. And that's another factor. I wanted people to look good, especially now with digital photography. Like back in the days, it was just going off a feeling. I assured them that y'all look good. Today, I get joy. Even since digital photography has come into play, I absolutely love to take my camera and turn to the back and show them how they look, and then see that expression of joy in their face. And that meant everything to me, you know. So, you know, that whole process was a collaboration, but it's priceless when you let them see what you created and allow them to see how beautiful they are and how this moment is really special.
Absolutely. So real quick, I would like to ask you, since you brought it up, are you shooting mostly with film, or are you shooting with digital these days?
With all honesty, the film cameras are now, they're like dinosaurs. Those are going to museums. I think I'm done with film. You know, I'm slowing down from photography overall. With all honesty, I absolutely love digital photography. And one of the reasons why, as I explained earlier, I like to show my subjects their photographs, but then I like to come home and be able to download the image and send it to them. And that's the joy, to send you a JPEG of the image almost in real time. That means a whole lot to me. So film, it's become very complicated today. I don't have a dark room. I'm not processing my own film. The labs that once were are no longer here. So digital just makes it just easier right now. You know, that's how I feel. So I don't think I will ever go back to film. I have a number of film cameras here. I have a lot of film laying around, but I have no interest at this point. I've shot enough film in the past 40 plus years that I'm good right now.
I hear you. When you know, speaking about the immediacy of showing somebody the image, you know, going into barbershops, people be like, let me see what you took. And so luckily I was able to like have an app and show them like, look, this is what it is. This is what you look like. And they would, like you said, the joy in their faces. It's an addictive feeling because you make someone feel good about how they present themselves, you know? And so
what a beautiful thing to be able to do that, brother. I mean, that's the science of it, to bring joy in a person's life. To see that expression of satisfaction, that's priceless. And that's what I get out of it. I want to see that expression of joy. Another thing, what I do too, you know, I take a photograph with my camera, but I being everybody got a cell phone. I said, bro, let me get your camera right quick, and let me get a shot of you with your camera. And I always do that. Now you got it right away, and that makes me feel good. So I don't have to even go home and send it to you. You got it right away. So any opportunity comes where a person will allow me to photograph them with their camera, I always do that. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah. So we don't have too much time left. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. We'll answer them if we can. I wanted to, because we talked about the pose, and you're an artist and you're usually behind the camera. Are there any photos that were taken of you that you absolutely love? Are you easy to be photographed? What's your?
Oh, I'm hard. I'm hard because I'm quick. I take an image and I do it fast. I don't need that much time. I got people kind of like slow, and let me get another one. They want to take 10, 20 frames. I don't roll like that. So I get kind of frustrated, and it shows in my face. Because one thing I learned with the photography I do and the people I photograph, they ain't got time for all that. You know what I mean? So I make it fast. I get that shot. I know exactly what I want, and I get it in 1 or 2 frames. But I meet people who with digital cameras now, they kind of like extra. They want to do about 30, 40 pictures. And now it's like, come on, you don't need to do all that. It's just, all it takes is about 2 frames to get the shot. So I get a little frustrated every now and then, but my main partner, Terrence Jennings, my right-hand man, nothing but love for that brother. He's been documenting me for about 20 years, and he has some of the most deepest photographs of me right now. And my wife, she has full access, so she gets everything of me. So she probably has some of the most compelling photographs of me that no one will probably ever see. From the ocean, me with my dogs, just a whole nother side, with the family that no one really sees. So, she has her camera and she gets it in. But besides her, Terrence Jennings, I think, has a really large body of images of me because he accompanied me to a number of my exhibitions and different travels out of the country. Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, since you're slowing down a little bit from the photo making process, what is it that you do to just like relax and just unwind, and like what does Jamel Shabazz do to just like feel peace?
I like to work on myself. I like to meditate and heal. I mean, I'm a wounded individual, so I'm trying now to heal and work on being a man of better character. I like to maintain my physical. I work out. I spend time at the ocean. I have a little garden. I go there, to meditate and to get close to my inner self. So that's very important to have my balance. But a lot of deep meditation, a lot of time alone to just reflect on my life and my purpose. So I need that now because I've been traveling for so many years. I finally have a moment of pause where I can just process what my life is about and to gain greater clarity in what it is I need to do in life. I just turned 60 a few weeks ago. So now I'm entering a new stage in my life. Thank you, brother. A whole new stage. So I'm trying to find out where I need to be at right now. But one of the things I do, and it's not really to unwind, but it's to try to help heal people. During this time of lockdown and Corona, there's a lot of individuals that are very ill. They're going through a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of death and concern. So what I'm doing, I'm having a lot of phone calls with people now. I want to do wellness checks and see how people are doing. So that's one of the things I have an opportunity to do now since I've slowed down. I'm making a point to try to at least call 5 people a day to check up on them and see how they are doing. And almost everyone that I've had conversations with is going through some type of situation. So if I could be there to just listen to you and just help you just get it out and process what you're going through, it means a lot to me. I have friends that lost their wives. A good brother lost his son. One of my good friends, my best man, he died a week and a half ago. So I'm trying to help families maintain themselves by just reaching out to them. So that's very important right now. Once I take care of myself and I have my balance, then I go forward and I just try to have conversations with people to just check on them like never before in my life. Back in the early 80s, we might have did a little bit, but today I make it a point to reach out to people all the time. Like I said, there's a whole lot of suffering and pain, and that phone call can make all the difference in the world. A text is one thing, you know what I mean? A DM is another, but it's nothing like hearing a voice and really getting into somebody like, brother, everything is all right. You might say, I hear something in your voice. You know what? It ain't all right. I needed to hear that, brother. I'm here for you. I just want you to know, bro, I got your back, and let's kick it. And most of my conversations might last for about 1 or 2 hours, and so much has been revealed. So that means a lot to me to try to be a
real quick. We have like 10 seconds left. because Instagram is going to kick us off. I would like to thank you for joining me in this conversation. You dropped so much knowledge. I appreciate you.
And I appreciate you, brother. Let's stay